Hello. Today I want to talk to you about self-recognition. Over the past years, as I've grown up, moved away from home, moved away from faith, and drifted away from a few friends, I've at times found myself under the feeling of, I don't know who I am anymore. That feeling of distance from a version of myself that I once was, but now cannot recall. So whenever I encounter something that unifies that past version of myself with who I am now, I cherish it. I'm not a very nostalgic person, so perhaps that contributes to the lack of that feeling. I'm not drawn to the past, nor am I really enthralled by the future. I like things for completely arbitrary reasons. My lack of nostalgia doesn't mean that when I re-encounter Star Wars Battlefront 2 on PlayStation 2, that I find it dated and unenjoyable. I enjoy it quite a bit, actually, despite it being old and simplistic. I didn't enjoy Star Wars Battlefront 2017 the one time I played it with a friend, but that isn't because this isn't my beloved old game from back when games were good. It's because it's a modern FPS, and I don't enjoy that genre. I never enjoyed a Call of Duty or a Battlefield. Sure, it might be one of the most visually impressive games I've ever seen, but I don't get anything out of it.
While I am not nostalgic, I might be sentimental. There's a difference, and I can't explain that. Before we get to the topic and the title of this video, I want to start by telling you how I come up with these video essay ideas. If this isn't your first video essay of mine, you'll likely notice how my videos tend to go slightly off the rails by the end, and that's because my intention isn't to talk about whatever game I'm thinking about, but to use that game to talk about topics. It's a horrible holdover from being an English major. So while the first few essays were me just wanting to talk about topics that were bouncing around in my head, now one of the ways I will start an essay is by asking myself, what is a game that I could never write about? And picking one and going from there. Sonic the Hedgehog was what my brain answered this time, and after some thought, I agreed. What could I even say about Sonic? I really only played them on the Genesis, so beyond it's pretty cool that Sonic the Hedgehog is an eco-terrorist, I don't really know what else I would say. Oh yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog is an eco-terrorist. He truly is God's wokest warrior. A few months back, I was at my friend's apartment and we were looking at his collection of games for one to play. I saw Sonic Origins collections and figured, hey, that could be fun. We booted up, I select Sonic 1 despite it not being my favorite of the series by any metric. The introduction plays and by pure instinct I enter the level select code. If you were to ask me to tell you what that code was, I couldn't. I do not know the level select code. But my hands do. Or at least they do once the music kicks in. I don't currently consider myself a Sonic fan, but I was for a decent chunk of my life. I didn't buy a Sonic game between Sonic Heroes and Mania. I replayed those classic Sonic games on Sonic Mega Collection Plus a lot, and later on an emulator on my laptop, and then much later when I acquired a second generation Genesis. I watched that Super Eye Patch Wolf video on Sonic the Hedgehog several times, and so when I finally played Sonic Mania, I felt so much emotion at the moment when it did the Sonic CD time travel. I didn't know I would feel that way. I felt those chills that wash over you before you cry go through my body. It was a degree of feeling that I had not expected from a game series I had thought I had moved on from, one I thought I had outgrown. So yeah, of course afterwards I went back and finally played Sonic Generations, and now I'm almost done with Shadow Generations. I love it, it's genuinely a great time. Playing through a Sonic Heroes level in Shadow Generations brought the biggest smile to my face. In fact, this whole game brought the biggest smile to my face. I think I'm at the point where if Project 06 got an official release, I might be morally required to pick it up. I even ended up watching Sonic 3, and that might be the greatest live-action American anime adaptation. Life becomes really freeing once you reach the enlightened state of loving Sonic while fully aware of all of its issues present. Once you let yourself love a thing simply because you love it, it's not anti-intellectual to love something enough to ignore its flaws. I was hesitant to let myself love things like Sonic, Tron, Doritos due to that concern. And saying that I enjoy Sonic enough to not care when lock-on breaks and sends me plummeting to my death is not denying that those flaws exist. If you want me to believe that getting worked up over a minor temporary setback caused by a video game bug is the intellectual position, I think you need some self-reflection. I've gone on record for why I didn't like Dark Souls 2. I swear it feels like the people who praise it are playing some other game than I am. But I'll say this. When I was capturing footage for my video on it, I started to feel like I could be having fun. Not enough to keep playing, but enough for it to linger in the back of my head. That perhaps I could end up loving this game, and if I got to that point, I wouldn't care about those issues I had. Is it that I love Demon Souls that leads me to believe it is both a 0 and 10 out of 10? I will also add, though, that after playing through Sonic 1 with my friend, we then installed Dark Souls 2, and I did not then have that feeling of fun that I had when I was capturing footage. But man, for one moment there, I was actually enjoying Dark Souls 2. Enough for me to make this point, but not enough for me to actually want to go back and play it. Sorry, Dark Souls 2.
I talked with my dad about what was the first video game I ever played. And while his first immediate answer was Sonic the Hedgehog, he did then backtrack after thinking about it and say, actually, it was probably Rage Racer or Test Drive 4 on the PlayStation 1. You were really good at it. So, either way, I think I can blame my dad for any speeding ticket I ever get. Regardless, however, Sonic was there at the moment I was forming memories. I remember playing Sonic the Hedgehog on the original Sega Genesis, trying to see how fast I could beat Stage 1, and calling it Sonic Speedruns, a term that perhaps I coined. However, it was before the internet, and therefore I cannot take credit for the term. But I fully believe that the movement in Sonic the Hedgehog is why I do not like Mario, and why I love SSX, Burnout, and Vanquish. Sonic is why I love some chiptune music that sounds like a Sega Genesis but not like an NES, but if we're talking about Tim Fallon, he gets a pass. Sonic defined my taste in a way I really never dissected. I feel pretty certain that without Sonic the Hedgehog, the new Lantlos album, Nowhere in Between Forever, would not have brought the dumbest smile to my face. Without Sonic the Hedgehog, I wouldn't have clicked with Xenosphere's spin dash style of gameplay, and then financed a whole book that inspired me to write. Without Sonic the Hedgehog, I doubt I would love bee-hopping in Quake 2, rocket jumping in Quake 3 and Arena, and all of Dusk. Perhaps those parts of me would exist no matter where I first encountered them. Perhaps my taste was always predefined, and this was only my means of stumbling into it. Still, the first place I got a sample of that flavor will have to always be somewhat important to me.
I felt that lack of self-recognition, however, when playing Ratchet & Clank 3 HD. That was an entirely empty feeling. I feel it when I return to an album that I once loved and it doesn't land anymore. When I eat somewhere I used to cherish and now it doesn't taste as good. The music of the band Islands or Ockerville River, while once bands I loved every album from, now only a handful of them still mean anything to me. So when I listen to Urban Hymns by The Verve and I'm transported to the backseat of my parents' car on the way to drop off my dad at work, that final track reminds me of the time my mom skipped the song after being in shock by how he says "fuck you," and then making up a quick excuse to not let me or my sibling know that a bad word was said or what it was. And then, being reminded of that drive brings more memories with it. I remember eating Burger King by the train tracks with my dad when we would pick him up for lunch, and running up to the fence and the feeling of the force of the train trying to knock over 4-year-old me. I remember the kind woman at the register giving me a toy from the display case since they were all out of stock anyways. No idea who you are, but deeply thank you so much for doing such a small act of kindness for a silly little kid. Eating at Burger King does not unlock these memories because I don't eat at Burger King, nor does its flavor have any importance in my life. My dad played the band U2 a lot, way too much in fact, but I don't feel any connection to them besides Elevation is kind of fun, and Sunday Bloody Sunday is actually just a great song. But why don't I feel a connection there? Because I never told myself some aspect of this is mine like I did with Starfly or 59's I Drive a Lot. I remember one summer in 10th grade flipping through the 7-CD mixer in the blue Isuzu Trooper my mom was driving and recognizing it from even further back in my childhood, but without any specific details, and playing it 3 times in a row just trying to remember where I heard this before. And it's because of that moment that I'm a big fan of shoegaze and dream pop music. Our identity gets entangled with the art we encounter. I was mentally outlining a story for a game I was making that was in hindsight just Escape from New York but with genetic warfare, but I hadn't seen that movie yet, so I give myself a pass. So when I watched Children of Men at age 14 and I saw the idea that I had pictured in it on screen, it became my 4th ever movie to acquire the label of my favorite movie, and I'm proud of myself for having good taste even at that age. In 2013, I bought the humble Jim Guthrie bundle, and then that snowballed into me making music in MTV Music Generator and eventually making the music I do today. And when I hear his song Roads and Paper Routes, it speaks to me in a way that few other songs do. We don't choose what speaks to us. I didn't choose to think that Sonic the Hedgehog is still peak. I will always love Sonic through ups and downs of the series because I don't play the bad ones. If I played Sonic Lost Worlds or Sonic Forces, I likely wouldn't love them that way that I love Mania or Shadow Generations because I am not brand loyal. You can tell me what something is, but that doesn't mean I'll recognize it. I've said in the past that Bioshock Infinite used to matter for me, and that is enough. But here I've said that Ratchet & Clank 3 was in my top games of all time and means nothing now. I mean, the difference is just that Bioshock Infinite still makes me feel. I still find its gameplay loop fun and dynamic, and its characters engaging, and Ratchet & Clank 3's gameplay just feels solved, and the story is filled with jokes I've heard too many times. Also, it's front-loaded with a lot of the worst it has to offer, so that doesn't help. I didn't choose to have Infinite still resonate with me. I thought that Ratchet would have mattered at least a bit longer than it did. Infinite resonates with me, and that's just how it is. So, what are we meant to do when we lose recognition? Is that feeling lost forever? When I think back to the different periods of my life, I can remember how I felt attached to that memory, but that doesn't mean that it will resonate with me that same way. I think that identity loss is a natural part of, well, at least the first third of your life. It just has to be balanced with building up identity in other ways. It is painful to know that the things you love isn't a list of things that you have control over.
Last year, I met up with a friend of mine from college. You know those moments when you meet up with someone who you haven't seen in years, and it feels like you've had no time away? This wasn't that. I had a great time catching up, but several points in the conversation led to me feeling like the version of him that I had known had changed so much over the years that I didn't know him anymore. Or the version I had knew had departed. Thinking back on this meeting, and I cannot discern if it really was that he had changed that much, or perhaps I had. Or perhaps the two of us had both changed in different directions. I still love the guy. But now I've perhaps found myself guilty of the crime of holding my own version of someone in priority to who they really are, loving not him, but a construct of my own making. I don't think I know how to love someone outside of their constructed version when, due to miles and years, I don't have an up-to-date version of. The obvious solution then is maintain a relationship despite the miles, call them at least every quarter, ask them about their lives, about the people who they care for's lives. Perhaps in that instance I would still feel that distance as it grows. Or perhaps we would be maintaining a bridge and keep in contact more. But tragically, I don't, and at this point, can't know what it would have been. But I can remind myself of this for next time. On April 2nd, 2026, during my trip down to Southern California for another friend's weddings, and it's much better to go to one of those than a funeral, I met up with an old friend. We have the habit of meeting each other at Coco Chibana for their chicken katsu omelet. It's really good. Due to it being a work day for her, scheduling was a bit difficult, and that led to me being 30 minutes early. So, I had time to kill, and I walked down to the local H-Mart just for snacks for my drive back up to Oregon. So I walk through the H-Mart, and as I'm doing so, I spot something that I've been looking for literally every time I've ever stepped foot into an Asian market. When I was little, my family would eat at a Mongolian barbecue restaurant called Pan Asia. I'll talk about it more someday. But on 3 occasions, instead of giving me or my sibling a fortune cookie, we were given these small discs that were red and fruit flavored. I have no idea what they were called, but I've been searching for them ever since. I bought several candies from H-Mart thinking that this would have been what I was looking for, only to be disappointed when it wasn't. And this wasn't either. Those were the size of dimes, and these are like the size of like those big foreign coins. But besides that shape, they do look identical. And they're half off, so I mean, I'm not going to cry over $1.49. I pick them up in some UCC milk tea, and then I go to my lunch, and I order a level 8 spice. Then I kind of think, man, I think I should have gotten a 9. So I go back to the hotel room afterwards. I open it up, I try it, and eureka! I found it. After all of these years, I have found it. I want to run naked through the hotel hallway shouting, I have found it! It only took 2 decades, but I have found it. I don't know what the hell hawthorn fruit is, but I know that's what I used to eat, so now I can look up and find the real one. I give one of the 3 rolls it came with to my sibling, since I feel like this is something they too would want to re-encounter. So how do they hold up? Are they great? Does not fucking matter. It's childhood. It tastes like a lost desire. It's this like firm, crumbly, crystalline fruit leather. They're my lost childhood candy. And then when I went to H-Mart the next time, they have literally 1 pack remaining of the brand that I used to eat. It too is childhood. If I'm being honest, the larger ones are much better. But I found it, and I will never forget it now. You know I'm not a big fan of nostalgia, but in this instance, in something like this, I love it. I love reconnecting with a lost part of myself. That is a part of nostalgia I can get behind. And then after writing out this essay, before filming it, I went back and they had another set. So of course I bought more of these Haw Flakes. I picked them up for a second time at my local H-Mart. And the cashier, as she's ringing me up, comments on them, telling me how much she loved them, about how she'd only rediscovered them recently, and that they were a thing she had had as a kid at the local Chinese restaurant she used to go to, and how the owner liked her, and on a few occasions gave them to her. And then, when she came back to that restaurant 20 years later, he remembered her and handed her some. It feels very special to have shared this experience with this little candy. It felt like I was able to understand a part of someone through this shared, what I had thought to be completely unique experience.
So what do I currently owe Sonic the Hedgehog? What of the past is still relevant to me today? Do I interact with the fandom? No. Do I chat with anyone on the topic of Sonic? Haven't done that since my time on Yo-Yo Games, which probably would have been around 2010. Do I still draw custom Sonic OCs to express my devotion? Not since the 5th grade. Hell, I haven't drawn anything for a long while. So what does this history provide me with today? My sibling texted me that Shadow Generations was amazing and that I should play it. And so I did. And that's the answer. I think that all Sonic provides me currently is a connection to my sibling whose life has been taken to the coast opposite mine. But we still share Sonic as a means of conversing. And that's a meaningful enough part to play in my life. But I think the reason why it resonates is more than that. Shadow Generations and Sonic Mania are clear works of love from people who are just as, actually, probably more passionate about Sonic than me. I see parts of myself in these games because there is the same love for the stupid anthropomorphic hedgehog that I feel. I know that this is just some stupid anime bullshit, and instead of winking at the camera, it just smiles and says, "This is what I am." It's genuine, it has heart, and I can't help but love it for that. Sonic will continue to speak to me as long as it is made in love. Sonic matters to me because it was there from the start, and it knows that is enough for people to want to check in on like an old friend.
I don't need Sonic to be a bigger part of my life to still be important to me. Hell, I think only my mother really likes Jim Guthrie, and I don't know how much of it is that she likes Jim Guthrie versus how much it is that she wants to know me, and Jim Guthrie is a much easier reference point than Ben Frost or Shoo Shoo. I'm grateful for Sonic the Hedgehog for reminding me of myself, especially as I get further in time and distance from who I was. As I lose parts of myself that I thought were definitional, and yet Sonic remains, my appreciation for the blue blur grows. While I'm not who I was 7 years ago, I am built on the foundation of that version of myself, and the one before that, and so on. And I will continue to lose more parts of myself and gain new things that matter to me. But throughout it all, for some reason, Sonic the Hedgehog will be there.